Hey guys, it's Justin at the Survivor Review, and today I have the pleasure to talk about Superman 3. This is just such a bad movie. Remember how in Superman 2, in the theatrical version, when Richard Lester took over, he filmed some very stupid comedic scenes that were unnecessary? Yeah, well now he has complete creative control and filmed 100% of Superman 3. Yeah, it's really surprising that, because usually movie series slowly deteriorate, and this one, it goes, 1 is great, 2 almost as good, 3 it's downhill. All the epicness, like the gravitas, all the grandness of the previous 2 Superman movies that even Superman 2 still had, even with the Lester scenes, is all completely gone. None of that is here at all in Superman 3. It's basically a Richard Pryor comedy with Superman in it. Because apparently, in an episode of the Late Show with Johnny Carson, Tonight Show, whatever, Richard Pryor was on there, and he's talking about how he saw Superman the movie, and he was explaining the whole thing. He was really into it. And so apparently that made them want to cast him as the main antagonist in this movie. Kind of antagonist. Starts out as kind of bad, but it kind of turns good near the end. And I'm like, really? That's what made you want to cast him in this movie? If I saw that, that would have been cool. I probably would have cast him as, maybe a small cameo. Something cool and fun, but not as the main part of the movie. He was obviously done to just appeal to the adult audiences, because 90% of this movie is a children's movie. And the movie involves Superman fighting a supercomputer. Yeah, the plot, it has this guy named Gus Gorman, that's played by Richard Pryor, and he can't find a job, and he's having a hard time doing that, and all of a sudden he starts working at this computer company, and somehow becomes a computer whiz. Somehow he's really good with computers. I don't know, and he scams the company out of $20,000, and the owner of the company, Webster, notices that, and instead of firing him or sending him to jail, he uses him to mess with the satellite and stuff like that, to change the weather, which I don't think is possible with the satellite, but whatever, to destroy his competition with coffee companies and oil companies. And basically, yeah, that's our main bad guy, is Webster, and he is the most cliched, stupid. I mean, the actor is alright, I guess. He did okay with what he had, but the character is nothing. I mean, honestly, it's the most cliched villain ever, and it's practically just a little rent Lex Luthor. He's terrible. The villain. The actor, the actor and the acting, I guess. I mean, for what it is, he's alright. I don't have too much of a problem with him. And while that's all going on, the storyline for Superman is that he goes back to Smallville, his hometown, to cover his high school reunion, and how a small town kid has made it to a big city and all that stuff. In the process, he meets Lana Lang, who was the person he always liked in high school and stuff like that. And they have some scenes together, basically stuff like that. The plot, I don't know. The plot just seems like a lot of things just got thrown in. It doesn't have a clear path. It just a lot of stuff gets thrown in, and the problem is a lot of stuff with Superman really feels like it's just giving him something to do. The whole storyline of him going to Smallville and that stuff, we just felt like we need Superman to do something while the villains are hatching out their plan. And there's this part near the end where they want to kill Superman, so Richard Pryor makes his own kryptonite, and there's one unknown element in making it, and he doesn't know what it is because it's not from Earth, so he just adds in tar or whatever, and so he makes his kryptonite, and the kryptonite doesn't kill Superman, but it makes him evil, kind of. It just makes him a jerk, but it's supposed to be he's evil. And the whole evil Superman subplot, which would have made for an awesome movie, because Christopher Reeve nails it as the evil Superman, is just thrown at the last minute subplot near the end. Barely any development at all. Probably the most underdeveloped thing in a movie ever. It's just some reason he turns evil when he does some things. and then he fights himself, which doesn't make much sense, and then he's back to being Superman. Yeah. And that whole bad Superman subplot just feels like an excuse to get Superman out of the action and let the main characters build their supercomputer. Everything with Superman here, it just doesn't feel like it's necessary. It doesn't feel like it's a necessary story. It's not moving the storyline of Superman and Lois and all that forward at all. Like, the storyline with him going to Smallville is intriguing, but it doesn't really add to anything. It's kind of just like an issue of a comic book, where it's just like, oh, in this issue he goes back to Smallville. It doesn't feel important at all. And speaking of Lois Lane, she's only in 2 scenes, at the beginning and end. And that was because she publicly said while reshooting the scene for Superman 2 that she hated Richard Lester. So he paid her back by only putting her in 2 scenes. And in one scene she's in the office, and then she goes off to like Hawaii or something for a vacation, and then comes back at the end. Yeah, that's it. What surprised me, because I actually rewatched this movie before this review, and that was a pain to do, because the movie is like 2 hours and 5 minutes, and it just goes on and on. But what surprised me is at the beginning of the movie, it actually started out pretty good. The beginning, I mean, besides the opening credit scene, I'll get to that in a minute, the stuff with Richard Pryor when he's working for the computer and stuff like that, he's not as bumbling and he's not trying as hard to be funny. So that stuff with Richard Pryor is okay. And then we get to the scene, there's actually a pretty charming and mildly enjoyable scene back in the Daily Planet office with Perry White and Jimmy Olsen and all of them, which is kind of a cool scene just to see the actors back, because I love this cast. Like, this to me is like one of my favorite like Superman cast of characters, so it was great seeing them again. And there's a couple funny moments. Like, there's one funny Perry White moment where Lois is like, okay, I'm going by, and they're like, oh, bye, see you later. And then Clark goes, well, I guess I gotta go. And nobody says anything. And he's like, okay, I'm going. And then Perry White just looks at him and goes like, and I don't know, I love that little head nod that Perry White gave. And then there's a scene of them on the bus, Clark and Jimmy Olsen going to Smallville, and there's this huge power plant that's starting to explode and stuff like that. And that's a really fun action scene. It's pretty enjoyable. It's not like the most intense scene, and the resolution to it is goofy, but I kind of liked it, where they had to take out the fire really quickly because like there's all this acid in there and it's gonna blow up. And so Superman flies to a lake and freezes it with his like super breath and picks up like a layer of it and flies over to the power plant and drops the layer of like ice onto it. I thought that it was goofy, but it was cool, and it's actually a really fun action scene. And what I like about it is actually, Jimmy Olsen gets something to do, because you see him, he's taking pictures of it, and then he gets hurt and stuff like that. And that's cool, because Jimmy Olsen never does anything in the Superman movies. He's always just lounging around the Daily Planet. So it's cool to see him do something different. The other biggest flaw in this movie, besides, like I said, the stupid plot, is the overuse of comedy. And terrible comedy. The Superman 2 comedy, like times 10. It's so ridiculous. Like, the opening credits. The opening credits of the first Superman movie and the second one was just epic. It's in space and the titles are flying at you, and it's so cool. It's a classic John Williams theme. This opening credits is a slapstick routine. People walking around the city, somebody knocks into this, and this leads to that guy falling down, which leads to this guy tumbling over. And while that's going on, the opening credits are like coming up at the bottom. It's the stupidest scene ever. And you're like, am I watching a Superman movie or just a bad Three Stooges movie? And it's so like, how did the studio approve that? And there's some really stupid stuff with Richard Pryor messing with the computer, and then you see the stop sign, the walk and do not walk, the blue person for the walk sign and the red person for the do not walk, and the lights keep switching, and then the blue walk sign moves into the red one and starts fighting the red sign. What? That's so stupid. So it is such a big step down from the first two, like a giant step down, and it's just a really bad movie. I mean, there's some decent elements in there. Like, the whole bad Superman stuff is terribly handled, But Christopher Reeve gives it actually a really great performance as the bad Superman. There's a scene where it's not explained, doesn't make any sense at all, but Superman lands in this junkyard, and somehow like Clark Kent kind of like comes out of him. So there's another Superman, and there's the good Superman, and there's Clark Kent, like the bad Superman, and there's like Clark Kent, the good Superman, and they have a fight scene. And as much as it doesn't make any sense, there's no explanation to what it is or why it's happening. It's actually a pretty enjoyable scene, probably the most enjoyable scene in the whole movie, and that's the only real good part. And yeah, it's such a disappointment, especially if you don't know anything about these movies, and you watch Superman 1 and 2, and then you're like, oh, let's check out Superman 3. It's bad. I don't get why Richard Lester doesn't know Superman. I don't get why they thought he was a really good choice for this movie. Because he can't handle it. He doesn't know what to do with these characters. All he knows is to make a goofy comedy. And that's not the right choice. So, out of 10, I'll go 3.5. And that 0.5, just for the enjoyable action scene at the beginning at the power plant and the good performance by Christopher Reeve. Because Christopher Reeve is still trying. That's the one thing. The cast is actually still pretty good. The core cast. The rest of the cast is really dumb and stupid. Richard Pryor, the Webster character, and the two girls who are with him, 2 women that are with him, they're just bad. But the core cast is still having a good time. But basically, yeah, it's Superman 3. It's giant step down from Superman, from the first 2, from the epicness of the first 2. Actually, the second one wasn't perfect, but it still had some epicness to it. This has none at all. At all. No. So, yeah, that's Superman 3. And the only sad thing is, this movie's terrible, but it gets worse from here. With Superman 4, which, one thing I'll say about it right now is that it was done by a B movie studio, and that B movie studio cut the budget. That's all I'm going to say until next time. So, talk to you guys later.